Part 1. It's time to change. How to get started. Chapter 1. To change or not to change. How to respond to change. People are looking for a change. But after decades of ministry experience, I know firsthand how difficult it can be for people to truly change. Change doesn't just happen. We have to work at it. I find that most people like to stay in their bubble. They want to stay in the situations that are comfortable and familiar, even if those situations are unpleasant or wrong or even dangerous. People do not like to risk venturing out into the darkness of the unknown, even if the unknown is full of hope, even if what is out there has the potential to improve their lives. Change is risky, but we must learn to take that risk. Change is a process that anyone can learn. Unfortunately, we aren't always taught how to effectively handle change. If dealing with change was part of our curriculum in school, maybe our world would look a bit different. Change 101 could teach us how to cope when life throws an unexpected curveball. A breakup, a divorce, illness, death, bankruptcy, etc. Then Change 102 could encourage us to proactively pursue positive changes in order to improve the quality of our lives, pursuing a new career, fanning the flame of a dying marriage, losing a few unhealthy pounds, moving to a new city, etc. After successfully completing Change 101 and Change 102, instead of being thrown off course by changes, we would know how to rise and face them. We would be prepared, and we would seek out positive changes instead of waiting for the bubble to burst and force us into change. We would start eating healthier before diabetes forced our hand. We would start dating our spouse again before the word divorce was whispered. We would master the realm of change instead of being abused by it. Changes, both good and bad, happen to everyone. You cannot escape change. In fact, the only thing that really remains the same is change itself. Change is the essence of life. It is constant. Our world is in perpetual motion. Summer will become fall. Water will wear down rock. Buildings will be replaced. Shoes will be replaced. We are constantly moving forward or going backward. There is no such thing as standing still. With that in mind, how do we ensure that we are moving forward? Changed by the changing of your mind. The Bible commands us to change, but did you know it also tells us how to change? Romans 12 verse 2 is the call to change scripture. The entire process of change can be encapsulated in this one verse. Quote, "And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." End quote. In the original language, the word transformed actually means changed. It is the same word used to describe the metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly. The word renew also means to change. With these definitions, we could rewrite the verse like this: "And do not be conformed to this world, but be changed by the changing of your mind." The word transformed also implies a transition. Many people try to take one giant step to go from where they currently are to where they want to be. Then, when they trip and fall, they don't understand why. They wouldn't be confused, though, if they had a good understanding of the nature of change. Forced change. Remember, there are two types of change that come into our lives: forced change and proactive change. In the spring of 1998, in Jonesboro, Arkansas, a 13-year-old boy opened fire on his classmates. Apparently, the thing that motivated his assault was the fact that his girlfriend had broken up with him the day before. Because of that, he took guns to his school and killed several innocent classmates. He killed people because a change he did not like was forced upon him. We all have experienced forced change. Forced changes are external events that are not self-initiated. They're changes you did not choose and would rather not have experienced. Look through this list of a few examples of forced change and consider how many have touched your life. Illness, divorce, a child on drugs, burglary or mugging, corporate downsizing, placement of an elderly parent in a nursing home, a weather-related disaster, a decrease in income or financial ability, death of a friend or family member, an accident. Many people have tremendous difficulty coping with forced change. When that girl told her boyfriend she didn't like him anymore, he experienced a forced change. Something happened that he did not want to happen, and he did not know how to deal with it constructively. One reason people have such a challenging time with forced changes is that it is impossible to be prepared for them. When your boss says, "We are downsizing and we don't need you anymore," it's usually a surprise. When your spouse announces, "I don't love you anymore, I want a divorce," you are usually caught off guard to some degree. There is no way to prepare specifically for forced changes. The fact that the change is unexpected and unwanted makes it harder to accept. Forced change does not come to you as an isolated event. When any change comes into your life, it affects multiple things. When people relocate, for example, not only does their work environment change, but so does their home, their personal relationships, their church family, their school system, and even the weather around them. That's one of the things that makes change so difficult to handle. It seems to strike in so many places at once. There's a reason you'll hear people say about a certain event in their life, "It changed everything." It's not an exaggeration. One change can affect everything. Proactive change. Some changes are not forced upon us. We choose to make them. I call these proactive changes, and we make them because we desire to improve the quality of our lives. These changes are often prompted by internal rather than external events. For example, a middle-aged man realizes that if he does not lose those extra 100 pounds, he may not live to see his grandchildren graduate high school, or a single mother decides to go back to college to further her education and her paycheck. These are changes those people initiated. Proactive change is invigorating. There is something energizing, exciting, and fulfilling about initiating a positive change in your life. The progress you make and the results you reap feel amazing. From overcoming a bad habit to making some new friends, the results of proactive change improve the quality of your life. Proactive change is encompassing. Just as forced change is not isolated in scope, so proactive change can affect multiple areas at once. When you make an improvement in one area of your life, the change tends to leak into other areas as well. For example, the man who begins and sticks to a morning workout regimen starts to feel better about himself and goes into the office in a happier mood. After several weeks, the boss notices his change in attitude and gives him a raise. The raise gives the man a little extra money to take his wife out on a weekly date, which in turn improves their relationship. Because dad and mom are getting along better, the children feel more secure. Such is the domino effect of proactive, chosen change. A little goes a long way. Emotional effects of change. Change, whether forced or proactive, can bring on a load of negative emotions. These feelings are powerful. They can knock you off course and cause you to throw up your hands in defeat. Identifying these feelings before they come can help you push, though. Loss. When you experience any change, forced or proactive, you will first feel loss. Loss does not feel good. If you lose your job, you feel the loss of your paycheck and perhaps the loss of your dignity and self-worth. If you begin a diet, you feel the loss of being able to indulge in your favorite fattening foods. With every change, good or bad, there is a price to pay. Conflict. Change may also bring feelings of conflict that show up primarily as anger. You feel like lashing out at someone or something, even God. You must be careful not to let this anger paralyze you. Some people stay just as angry 20 years after the fact. Such anger immobilizes them and keeps them from progressing in life. An effective way to channel your anger is to ask, what actions can I take right now that will enable me to successfully overcome this? Properly directed anger can actually help propel you to the answers you need. Rejection. Another emotion you may feel during change is rejection. You may feel like the world is against you or that life has not treated you fairly. You may think, if the God of the universe really cared about me, I would not be experiencing this. You may feel as if no one has ever gone through the pain and suffering you are going through, and that no one really understands. Feelings such as these may leave you identifying with your loss. Many people begin to identify themselves by their problems or failures. I am unfit and unhealthy. I am a bad husband and father. But you are not a problem. You are not a failure. Problems and failures are simply experiences that occur in your life. They are not you. Just as the label on a product is not the actual product, you are not your problems or failures. I knew a woman who experienced true tragedy with her 3-year-old son. He escaped her attention for a few minutes and wandered down their short driveway into the street, where he was struck and killed instantly by an oncoming car. In the wake of this awful event, the woman labeled herself an unfit mother. She became so overcome with guilt, she is still unable to function in society. There's no pretending that what this woman went through isn't one of the hardest things a person can go through. She started to see herself as her worst moment. Instead of mourning for herself and her son, she mourned for her son and blamed herself. How different would things be if instead of blaming ourselves, we gave ourselves grace to change? When unwanted change barges into your life, you need to disassociate yourself from it. It's important that you do not see yourself as permanently connected to it. If you allow it to, the failure will eventually fade, but you will remain. One man eloquently stated, "There are vast, undamaged areas in every human life, if only we would discover them." When you begin to identify yourself by your problems, you develop a victim mentality. Victims are always asking, "Why me?" Unfortunately, there are not always reasons for why things happen. People who see themselves as victims in their situations have a strong tendency to lash out verbally, emotionally, and even physically at those they perceive as causing the injury. People who see themselves as victims may even lash out at those who are innocent but happen to be nearby. The saying is too often true: hurting people hurt people. Responses to change. 1 Kings 3 tells the story of two women who had to deal with forced change. One of them lost her baby. She rolled over on him in the middle of the night and suffocated him. Instead of dealing with her mistake, she took another woman's baby, put it beside her in bed, and left her dead baby at the other woman's side. Change came to both of these women in an instant. In the short time between going to bed and awakening, change hit them right between the eyes. One woman lost her son to death, and the other lost her son to a thief. Both experienced a forced change they did not desire. Their responses, however, were very different. When the women brought their problem before King Solomon, he offered a unique solution. He said to divide the living child in two and give half of the baby to each mother. The real mother instantly protested, saying it would be better to give her child to the thief than to lose him to death. By this, King Solomon discerned which was the real mother, and the child was returned to her without harm. These two women responded to change in opposite manners. The one who lost her son developed a victim mentality. She struck out to injure an innocent party rather than work constructively through her loss. She put herself and her feelings in the center of the situation and probably asked herself, "Why me? Why not her?" She looked for a solution that would make her feel better in the short term and went so far as to steal someone else's baby. Her only purpose was to make her pain stop immediately. She projected her problem onto the mother with the living son instead of dealing with it. As long as you are overwhelmed with change, you cannot deal with it objectively. The mother of the living son also had change forced upon her. She went to bed the night before happy and content with her newborn, and she woke up with someone else's dead baby beside her. This mother could have lashed out in anger at the injustice. She could have even lashed out physically by trying to remove her son from the other woman's arms. Instead, she realized the situation was out of her control. Rather than center on her pain, she looked for a constructive way to deal with the matter and submitted her problem to the king. When the king threatened to cut her baby in half, she still refused to focus on herself and her pain. She focused on what was best for her child. When the most precious thing in her life was threatened, she remained objective enough to respond correctly. She was experiencing tremendous personal pain, yet that did not keep her from effectively coping with the forced change. Everyone experiences forced change, but only those people who respond to it correctly end up stronger after the fact. Positive, healthy results are not produced unless you make the right choices. When you go through change correctly, personal growth takes place. The real mother in this story not only made the right choice on behalf of her child, she also made the right choice on her own behalf, and she got her baby back as a result. You cannot look at life through a lens of self-pity or despondency and expect to deal with change constructively. To effectively deal with forced change, choose to respond positively. You must be willing to personally grow to meet the challenges that negative change brings. When you choose to have the right perspective and act on the right choices, you can emerge the winner in every situation. Even if your boss fires you unjustly, you can choose to say, I am going to use this change as a catalyst to propel me onto something bigger and better. Forced change is unsettling, but handling it correctly is invigorating. Forced change can become an opportunity clock rather than an alarm clock. By choosing your response, you can turn every situation to your personal advantage. I make it my goal to never sit around depressed, worrying about what changes are going to happen to me. I choose to stay excited about the new direction my life is heading. Choosing your response. Your initial response to forced change should be, I can swallow this. When I was a young boy, my mother made me take cod liver oil. She would literally hold my nose and put the spoon in my mouth. Still, I was the one who had to swallow it. And let me tell you, that was not easy. I always had to have something to drink immediately afterward to get that nasty taste out of my mouth. Think of swallowing forced change the same way. Yes, it smells and tastes awful, but ultimately, we must surrender to it if we are going to move on. Otherwise, we never stop tasting it as it just sits in our mouth. We may as well surrender because there is absolutely nothing we can do about it. Forced change comes, and it comes for good. We only have to accept it. Remember the old TV westerns where the good guys waved a white flag to surrender to their enemies? Invariably, they would be thrown in prison as soon as they surrendered. In that moment, it always felt like it was over for the heroes. But it was from the prison that the good guys found their escape and went on to save the day. Likewise, we must surrender to forced change before we can escape the prison of its negative effects. No matter how bad the situation, we must accept it before we can move on. Unfortunately, there are other ways people respond to forced change. Compromise. Some people refuse to swallow change and try instead to compromise. Instead of accepting the change, they merely put up with it and resign themselves to minimizing its effect on their lives. They do not grow through change, they grow around it. Take, for instance, a rejected wife who suffers an unwanted divorce. She may go on with her social life, dating, or even marrying another man, but she still keeps a part of her heart reserved out of fear of being hurt again. She has compromised with the change rather than accept it. She has allowed the unwanted change to capture part of her dignity and damage her self-worth. Accepting the divorce, despite the hurt and pain, would free her to work through the negative emotions and continue to grow. Endure. Another response people give to change is to just endure it. When enduring, people fight change by simply waiting for things to go back to the way they were. Their theory is that, in time, all will pass and return to normal. Therefore, they take no proactive action in their circumstances. They believe they can outlast the change. Of course, the truth is, it is impossible to go through change totally unaffected. If a baseball team plays only defense, they grow tired and weary. They're unable to score any points in the game. It's the same way in life. If you only go through life and change defensively, you will never move on to bigger and better things. You will end up bitter, not better. It is a lie for you to believe that you can simply outlast change without being touched by it. Resist. Sometimes people choose an even more difficult response to change: denial. Resisting or avoiding change occurs when a person denies that a change has even occurred or admits that it has occurred but ignores its effects. Some people resist the death of a loved one by keeping their belongings and room intact. They may continue to talk about the person as if he or she is alive, even though they died years before. I once knew a couple whose deck was sinking into the ground. They knew it was going to be an expensive fix, but chose to pretend it wasn't happening. But their denial of the fact did not change the fact. Similarly, married couples may avoid resolving a fight by acting like the other person is not even in the room. By avoiding the change, they put off the inevitable event of having to address the original source of conflict. The best course of action in any negative situation is to face the situation squarely and then choose your best response. Advice for dealing with change. Here are some positive things you can do when dealing with change. Acknowledge that the change really happened. You cannot begin to deal effectively with change until you have acknowledged its existence. Evaluate the change. Take the time to ask yourself some questions about what caused the change to come into your life. Consider some of the questions from the following list. Is this change just a result of living in an imperfect world? Stuff really does just happen. Is it a result of my personal choices and behavior? Is it a result of someone else's choices and behavior? Am I in an age transition, midlife crisis, or empty nest syndrome? Am I in a different age or era economically or socially? Technological advancements continually cause change to happen suddenly. Technology has affected and continues to affect how people live, work, and play. If things are changing around me, am I keeping up? Do something. You must do something to manage the change you are experiencing. Change can make you feel as if your life is in a crisis, but any change can bring either trouble or opportunity. It all depends on the actions you take to deal with it. Embrace the change as a part of your life and use it as a stepping stone for personal growth. Get through it, get what you can out of it, and get on with it. You are now ready to use this experience as a reference point to know how to deal with other changes that will come your way. You can change. The young boy in Jonesboro, Arkansas, chose to resist all unwanted change. If he had followed the advice in this chapter, he would have gone home and told his mother, "My girlfriend broke up with me, and it hurts." He would have asked himself appropriate questions that would have prompted personal growth. Why did she break up with me? Is there anything in my personality I need to change? Did I treat her with honor and respect? Or was this simply destined to happen based on our pairing? He would have decided on a course of action, perhaps finding another girlfriend or improving his social skills in general. Finally, he would have embraced the change as part of his life experience and moved on. Instead, this boy resisted change and reacted in a way that negatively altered his life and the lives of those around him forever. A reporter interviewed a man in Maine who was turning 103 years old. The reporter said to him, "Sir, in 103 years, you must have seen multitudes of changes." "Yes," the man replied, "and I've been against every one of them." Do not resist change. Remember that it is the only thing in your life that is going to remain constant. Things will change, so learn the process of change. Understanding where you are in the process of change will go a long way toward helping you manage the changes that come into your life. No matter what change comes upon you, say to yourself, I believe I am wondrously made by God, and He has given me the capacity and the gifts to deal with this change correctly. He will help me take my personal growth to the next level. You can change. Summary: you cannot escape change. In fact, the only thing that really remains the same is change itself. The entire process of change can be encapsulated in this one verse: and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12, verse 2. Change is a process that happens over time in stages. There are two types of change: forced and proactive. Forced changes come when external events you did not initiate happen to you. Proactive changes are changes you choose to make to improve the quality of your life. To effectively deal with forced change, choose to have a positive response. Choose to say, I'm going to use this change as a catalyst to propel me on to something bigger and better. Some people respond to change by compromising. They merely put up with it and resign themselves to minimizing its effect on their life. Some people respond to change by enduring. They fight change by waiting for things to go back to the way they were. Some people respond to change by denial. They resist or avoid change by denying that a change has even occurred, or by admitting that it has occurred, but ignoring its effects. To deal effectively with change, you must acknowledge it, evaluate the reasons for it, do something about it, and use it as a catalyst to propel you to something bigger and better. No matter what change comes upon you, say to yourself, I believe I am wondrously made by God, and He has given me the capacity and the gifts to deal with this change correctly. He will help me take my personal growth to the next level. You can change.